a map that a patient of my wife's a chiropractor, had brought in and showed my wife back in the mid-'80s of what North America would look like after the oceans rose to their new levels. Now at the time I thought this lady needs a tinfoil hat real bad. That's the only thing I could think of. It was a beautiful full-color map done by a psychic. But I always remember the map. I have a very good memory about things that I choose to remember. And I thought about this map, and I called my friend on the phone and I said, I got this map. I want to send it a copy of it. I got a little copy I found on the internet, 4 by 4 inches. So I sent it to him by email. And my friend looks at it and he says, well, from the Rocky Mountains east, it's very accurate compared to what the Navy showed us, with one exception. Wisconsin's gone on the Navy's map. Wisconsin is still there on Scallion's map, Gordon Michael Scallion, well-known psychic. And from the Rocky Mountains west, it's not even close to what the Navy says, not even a little bit close. So I went ahead and ordered a copy of Scallion's map, a full-size version of it, and I get together with my friend, and he goes over the entire coast of the United States, East Coast, Gulf Coast around Florida, down to Texas, West Coast on up to Washington. And he shows me in great detail where the Navy said the new shoreline was going to be. He also told me that the East Coast would take damage up to the Blue Ridge Parkway. Now the Blue Ridge Parkway runs north-south on the east side of the Appalachian Mountains, about 100 miles from the coast. Now you have to keep in mind, this is not John Moore, this is U.S. Navy in classified briefings telling these men what would be happening in the future. Since talking to my friend, I've also interviewed 3 more Navy veterans. One was an officer in the Submarine Corps. Another was an intelligence officer from another service assigned to the Submarine Corps for a 3-year tour of duty. And the third guy was a Navy veteran. 4th guy, actually. The intelligence officer, he was kind of an unusual way that the two of us got together. A friend of mine, he's a college professor, and I was at his college class on international relations giving a presentation on terrorism. The other presenter was this former intelligence officer. So we finish our presentation to college students on terrorism, and we go to a pizza place in Rolla. And there's 4 of us. Myself, I'm sitting here. The retired intelligence officer, his wife sitting next to me. And the intelligence officer himself sitting across from me, and my friend the college professor is right over here. Once I found out that he did a 3-year tour of duty with the Submarine Corps, I knew I had to ask the question. I might never see this man again in my life. I got to ask the question. Now, we haven't talked about rising ocean levels. And this you have to keep in mind, this is a basic tool of investigative work, is interviewing witnesses at different times and different places, interviewing witnesses that don't know each other. You want to get to the heart of a matter, that's the way it's done. You find witnesses who don't know each other that have the same information, and you interview them at different times, different places. So I asked him, tell me what you know about rising ocean levels. His wife sitting next to me, before he can even speak up, his wife sitting next to me says the following. We were on our last duty assignment, and we were at the Pentagon. Now, we've been all over the planet, typical military family, and we had to pick a place to retire. We chose the Arkansas-Missouri Ozarks because of rising ocean levels. I had my answer. I had my answer. We talked about that a little bit more. A few weeks later, I made a lunch appointment with him, and I brought the map with me that I'd revised after going over with the first submarine veteran. I brought it with me. We met at Steak and Shake, had lunch, and I had him revise the map even further, getting a few more details in there. The third submarine veteran, retired submarine officer, he's one of my pistol students. We had lunch and we talked, and he says, John, I signed these non-disclose agreements. If I tell you what I know, I can lose my pension. I have to be out 5 years before I can tell what I know about rising ocean levels. I've only been out 3 years. I said, well, can you blink your eyes once for yes and twice for no? Then you won't be talking. He says, yeah, I can do that. The retired submarine officer verified what the other two submarine veterans had told me earlier. Word for word, detail for detail. And he also, this is the third man who had chosen the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks for his retirement home. The Prophecy Club, a Christian group out of Topeka, Kansas, they sent me on a nationwide speaking tour in 2005 on this topic. And I'm up in Detroit speaking on this. On one of the breaks, I have a man walk up and introduce himself to me. He says, "John, I'm in the insurance industry. And we've wondered for years, us in the insurance industry, why is there such a cluster of retired Navy people in the zip codes of the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks?" Now I know. Now I got my answer. The Navy knows. Another pistol student of mine, retired Navy guy, I said, "What's the altitude of your new home?" He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home. How many people can do that? Almost nobody. He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home in the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. Absolutely he did. How many planets are there in our solar system? 9? Okay. NASA. Never a straight answer. NASA. July 29th, 2005, announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena. Do a Google search. They did. Don't take my word for it. NASA announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena, 29th of July, 2005. Parade magazine and the Sunday newspaper. It was a front cover of the January 15th, 2006 edition. A friend of mine, I started telling him about these matters in 2004. After the NASA press announcement in July of 2005, he calls me up and he says, "John, you're not crazy. There really is a 10th planet." NASA said so. I said, "Thank you very much." There has to be a cause. And this is something, quite frankly, we don't need to address it, but we will address it. The cause is the 10th planet. Now, what NASA is calling the 10th planet is not the 10th planet we're concerned about. It's the 10th planet that's referred to in the Bible, also called Wormwood. The closer you are to the current equator, whatever that might be, the better off you are when these things happen, if there's a pole shift, because your climate's not going to change all that much. If you're in Miami, Florida, and we have a 20-degree pole shift, you're not going to end up with a really, really bad winter. You're going to have a mild winter. But if you're in Maine and you got a 20-degree pole shift, you could end up with the weather of Siberia real easy. And when this 10th planet comes through our solar system every 3,600 years, it just causes severe problems on our planet. Interacting with the Earth electrically and with gravity both. The back of your paper, no need for panic, there is a number of books cited that you can get from the library or purchase from different authors that talk in great detail about these planetary matters. Professor James McCanney, who is a credentialed scientist, has written a number of books on this. He's a real astrophysical scientist, and he knows about this stuff. I'm a private detective and a researcher. I'm not a scientist. But I can tell you what the scientists say, because I've read their books. And I can tell you what Dr. Velikovsky said, because I've read his books. And I can tell you what the Bible says, because I've read the Bible. And all these things are true, and all these things are in the process of happening right now. It took me a while to figure this out, for the following reason. All these Navy veterans, they were all told about abrupt climate change and rapidly, violently rising ocean levels. And I was trying to figure out, and I finally figured out